Welcome to today's video. In today's video, you're going to hear stories of encounters of the fourth kind. If you like today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos from the narrator. Echoes of the Unknown. The relentless ticking of the clock echoed through the silent house, each second scraping at my nerves. I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, the flickering candle casting eerie shadows on the walls. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows as if desperate to get in. I had heard the stories, whispers in the dark about strange lights and missing people, but I never believed them. Not until tonight. It started with a low hum, barely audible, like the distant drone of an engine. I shrugged it off as my imagination, a trick of the wind. But then it grew louder, resonating through the floorboards, vibrating the air around me. The sound was unnatural, a mechanical buzz that sent shivers down my spine. I stood up, my heartbeat quickening, and moved towards the window. The yard was bathed in an eerie blue light, brighter than the moon, pulsating with a rhythm that made my skin crawl. I pressed my face against the glass, peering into the darkness. The source of the light was a sphere, hovering just above the ground, silent except for the persistent hum. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the house, followed by the sound of shuffling feet. My breath caught in my throat as I turned towards the hallway. The shadows seemed to stretch and shift, shapes forming and dissolving in the gloom. I could hear it now, a wet, slithering sound, like something dragging itself across the floor. I wanted to run, to flee the house and the horrors it held, but my legs refused to move. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as the sound grew closer, accompanied by a low guttural growl. The candle flickered violently, casting grotesque figures on the walls, and then it went out, plunging me into darkness. My heart pounded in my ears as I fumbled for my phone, its weak light barely piercing the darkness. I pointed it toward the hallway, my hand trembling. The beam illuminated a pair of eyes, large and unblinking, reflecting the light with an unnatural sheen. They were set in a face that was almost human, but grotesquely distorted, with pale, waxy skin stretched tight over sharp, angular bones. I staggered back, a scream stuck in my throat as the creature stepped into the light. Its limbs were too long, bending at impossible angles, and it moved with a jerky, insect-like motion. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of needle-like teeth, and hissed, a sound that seemed to resonate within my very skull. Without thinking, I turned and ran, stumbling through the house in a blind panic. The hum had become a deafening roar, shaking the walls and rattling my bones. The creature's footsteps were right behind me, a rapid, skittering noise that drove me to the brink of madness. I burst through the door and into the yard, the cold night hitting me like a slap. The blue light was blinding now, filling the sky and casting everything in an unearthly glow. I glanced back and saw the creature standing in the doorway, its eyes locked onto mine. It raised a spindly arm, pointing at me with a clawed finger, and then it spoke. The voice was a twisted parody of human speech, a garbled mess of sound that sent a wave of nausea through me. "You cannot escape," it said, each word a dagger in my mind. "We are everywhere." I ran into the woods, the trees closing in around me, their branches clawing at my face and clothes. The light followed me, searing through the foliage, casting monstrous shadows that danced and twisted in the corners of my vision. I could hear the creature's voice, echoing in my head, growing fainter but no less terrifying. I don't know how long I ran, but eventually I collapsed, my body giving out from sheer exhaustion. The woods were silent now, the blue light gone, replaced by the soft glow of the moon. I lay there, gasping for breath, my mind racing. Was it over? Had I escaped? The Midnight Abductors. I had always been a night owl, but tonight felt different. There was a heaviness in the air, a sense of foreboding that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I glanced at the window, noticing an unusual glow seeping through the curtains. Curiosity got the better of me. I approached the window cautiously, pulling the curtain aside just enough to peek outside. My heart skipped a beat. Hovering silently above the street was a massive, saucer-shaped craft, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence. Lights of various colours pulsated along its edge, casting eerie shadows across the neighbourhood. I backed away from the window, my breath coming in short gasps. This couldn't be real. Aliens were the stuff of science fiction, not reality. But the evidence was right there, floating silently in the sky. The hum started then, a low, bone-rattling vibration that seemed to resonate from deep within the craft. It grew louder, almost deafening, and then abruptly stopped. Silence, oppressive, suffocating silence. The air felt thick, charged with electricity. I tried to move, to hide, but my body wouldn't respond. It was as if an invisible force held me in place. Panic surged through me as I struggled against it. But it was no use. I was paralyzed. Suddenly, a bright beam of light shot down from the craft, piercing through the ceiling and engulfing me in its brilliance. I was lifted off the ground, weightless, as my room blurred into a blinding white void. My mind screamed, but no sound escaped my lips. When the light finally dimmed, I found myself in a metallic chamber, the walls lined with strange pulsating symbols. The air was cold, sterile, and filled with a faint odour. I was no longer paralyzed, but I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. I wasn't alone. From the shadows emerged figures, tall and thin, with elongated limbs and large, almond-shaped eyes. Their skin was a sickly grey, smooth and glistening under the harsh lights. They moved with an unnerving grace, their eyes blinking, fixed on me with a cold, analytical stare. One of them stepped forward, holding a device that emitted a low hum. I tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. The device glowed, and I felt a sharp pain in my head, as if thousands of needles were piercing my brain. My vision blurred, and I could hear a voice, not spoken, but inside my mind. Do not fear. We mean you no harm. But the words brought no comfort. Their presence was inherently wrong, a violation of every instinct. The pain intensified, and my thoughts were no longer my own. Memories surfaced, flashing before my eyes. They were probing my mind, shifting through my life as if it were a book to be read. I could feel them inside my head, pulling at my consciousness, and then, just as suddenly, they were gone. The device was turned off, and the pain receded, leaving a dull ache. The figures stepped back, their expressions unreadable. You have been chosen, the voice in my head continued. We will return. With that, the chamber dissolved into a swirl of light, and I was back in my apartment, lying on the floor. It was as if time had not passed at all. The craft was gone, the street outside dark and silent once more. I sat up, trembling, my mind racing. Had it all been a hallucination? A vivid nightmare? But the ache in my head and the strange lingering smell told me otherwise. I wasn't alone. They were out there, watching, waiting for the right moment to return.